For generations, across the span of human memory, we have performed a singular ritual. We have looked up from the light of our fires into the infinite darkness beyond and told ourselves a story of endurance. It is a story that says we are the exception, that while empires and species rise and fall, there is something about us, about our minds, our tools, our collective will, that bends the arc of destiny towards survival. We believe our technology is a ladder we climb, rung by rung, leaving the vulnerabilities of our ancestors in the dust below. With each breakthrough, the plow, the steam engine, the silicon chip, we imagine ourselves ascending further from the frail, biological need that once bound us to an unforgiving earth. This belief is not just wrong. It is the most dangerous kind of lie. A lie that hides a trap in plain sight by convincing us the trap is the sky above and not the ground beneath our feet. I am not here to speak of the dramatic ends, not of wars that consume nations in fire, or plagues that silence cities, or the celestial hammer blow of an asteroid. These are failures of circumstance, of luck, of politics. They are contingent. They could, in theory, be avoided. The end I will describe is not contingent. It is necessary. It is woven into the fundamental transaction that defines a technological civilization. It is a thermodynamic certainty. And it begins with the one thing we believe we have mastered, the one thing we never think about at all. Dirt. Common. Ordinary. Forgettable dirt. The soil is not inert matter. It is not a passive stage upon which life performs. It is the most complex biological construct in the known universe, more intricate than a coral reef, more layered than a rainforest canopy. It is a living archive, a meticulously compiled record of life and death over geologic time, and it performs a function so critical, so silent and unheralded, that its failure is not an event. It is a slow, irreversible unraveling that is complete long before anyone sounds an alarm. Soil is a chemical shield. It is the planetary barrier, the indispensable buffer between two titanic forces, the volatile, ravenously reactive oxygen in our atmosphere and the planet's deep, buried treasury of reduced carbon, the stored fuel of ancient life. A stable, living planet is an exercise in delayed combustion. The atmosphere holds the oxidizer. The crust holds the fuel. Keep them separated, and you have stability, a dynamic equilibrium that can last for eons. Bring them together, and they consume each other in the fires of oxidation, until one or both are exhausted. The primary mechanism of this separation is not rock. It is life itself, engineered into a structure we call topsoil. Not merely the thin, plow-disrupted skin we farm, but the deep, organic-rich, architecturally profound horizons that can require a millennium to form a single centimeter. This soil is a masterpiece of biological engineering, a labyrinth constructed by an unseen consortium of architects. Roots stitch it together with fibrous threads. Fungi weave through it with vast, gossamer mycelial networks, trading nutrient for carbon in an ancient, silent economy. Bacteria perform alchemy in the dark. Earthworms, nematodes, and countless microbes ceaselessly churn, digest, and rebuild. They do not create chaos. They build a matrix, a structure so intricate that water and air move through it not in a flood, but in a slow, controlled seep. Organic matter, the bodies of fallen leaves, dead roots, microscopic creatures, is pulled down into this labyrinth. It is not simply buried. It is processed, transformed, and ultimately stabilized. Its chemical bonds are twisted and locked into forms that fiercely resist attack by atmospheric oxygen. It becomes humus, a substance so stable it can persist for centuries. It binds with clay particles into complexes that can last for millennia. And through the immense, slow pressure of geology, it becomes a black shale, the coal seam, the droplet of oil. The fossil fuel is not an accident. It is a logical, ultimate product of the soil shield's work. Carbon placed in deep, long-term geological storage. This process is the planet's carbon sequestration engine, and, in the same breath, it is the planet's oxygen preservation system. For every single atom of carbon wrestled from the active cycle and locked away in this stable, unreactable form, a molecule of atmospheric oxygen is spared. It is not consumed in combustion. It remains in the air, available for breathing, for fires, for the metabolism of a complex biosphere. The soil shield is a guardian of the atmospheric balance. It is the planet's immune system against its own flammable chemistry. Now, introduce a catalyst of civilization, not the hunter-gatherer band, or the seasonal garden of a village, but planetary scale, intensive, permanent agriculture. The non-negotiable foundation required to feed the billions and to generate the massive, consistent surplus that fuels cities, armies, libraries, laboratories, and the relentless engine of growth. This form of agriculture has one absolute, unyielding requirement: radical simplification. You must dismantle the complex, multi-layered, self-renewing perennial ecosystem and replace it with a simple, flat, exposed, annual monoculture. You must trade resilience for immediate yield. You achieve this by clearing, and then by tilling. The moment the first plowshare of a rising civilization slices through the virgin sod, you are not merely breaking ground for crop. You are performing geological surgery with a blunt instrument. You are severing the labyrinth. You are exposing the deep, stabilized, shielded carbon that has not seen the atmosphere for centuries or millennia, to the ravenous oxygen in the air. You are initiating a rapid, violent chemical reaction. That dark, rich, fragrant smell of earth after a rain, that is the scent of complex carbon compounds. That deep, black color we associate with fertility, that is the carbon shield. Watch that soil over the seasons after clearing. See how it pales. See how it turns from a crumbly, structured sponge into a lifeless, compacted gray powder. It is not just wearing out. It is burning. In a slow, cold, invisible fire called oxidation, the carbon bonds with atmospheric oxygen and vanishes into the air as carbon dioxide. This is not a regrettable side effect of agriculture. It is a direct, physical, inescapable consequence of creating a field. And with every harvest, you complete the transaction. You remove the plant matter, the stems, the grains, that would have died and returned to the soil to feed the architects, and rebuild the labyrinth. You export that carbon from the local system entirely, to be consumed in cities, or stored in granaries, or fed to livestock. You are not farming. You are mining. You are strip mining the planetary shield itself. Now, scale this in time. This is where the comforting human perspective fails us utterly. A young civilization rises in a river valley, blessed with meters of deep, post-glacial volcanic alluvium. The first millennia are a golden age of terrifying plenty. The soil, this accumulated inheritance of millennia of natural shield building, gives up its stored fertility with breathtaking generosity. Yields are monstrous. Populations explode. Surplus balloons. Temples are built. Empires are forged. Epics are written. Section by section. Erosion, now unimpeded by the dense mesh of roots and fungi, accelerates. Wind and water carry the exposed soil away. The simplified, annual crop system cannot replicate the complex chemistry of carbon stabilization. The sequestration engine doesn't just store, it runs in reverse, becoming a source of atmospheric carbon. For centuries, even millennia, this doesn't matter in any human sense. The atmosphere is vast beyond comprehension. The loss is a rounding error. A civilization measures its health in harvest, not in atmospheric parts per million over 1,000 years. But a civilization, if it aspires to persist for 10,000, 100,000, a million years, must think in geological terms. It must adopt the perspective of the planet itself. And from that perspective, it is lighting a very, very long fuse. A fuse measured in the thickness of topsoil, burning down at a rate set by its own need to eat. The bomb at the end of this fuse is not climate change. That is a separate, parallel crisis, the buildup of CO2, a greenhouse gas, a problem of insulation. The bomb I am describing is oxidative debt. You are consuming, through the very act of sustaining your civilization, the foundational capital that keeps your atmospheric oxygen bank account in balance. Understand this. Oxygen is not a renewable resource on civilizational timescales. The Great Oxygenation Event was a singular, planet-altering transformation billions of years ago. The current, breathably high level of 21% is maintained by an exquisitely delicate, planet-wide balance. photosynthesis in oceans and forests, which produces O2, versus sequestration and respiration, which consume it by systematically ravaging the sequestration half of the equation. By turning the soil from a carbon sink into a carbon source, civilization tips the balance. It increases the rate of oxygen consumption without a matching increase in production. The mighty, slow-moving lever of planetary chemistry begins to tilt. The initial decline is infinitesimal, a ghost of a percentage point over 1,000 years. But the direction is set, and it is inexorable, and it has a non-linear, cascading trigger point. Let us project this forward. Let us imagine a civilization that survives its own adolescence. It unifies its planet. It conquers disease. It masters fusion energy. It learns to manage the global climate with vast, delicate geoengineering. It believes, with every justification, that it has achieved sustainability, that it has secured its place in the sun for the long cosmic haul. But it still needs to eat, and to feed a vast, stable population of high metabolism, large-brained beings, you cannot rely on experimental vat-grown protein or delicate hydroponic gardens for your foundation. You need bulk calories. You need carbohydrates, fats, proteins at scale. You need fields, millions of square kilometers of them. The deep, virgin soil shield is now a global memory. Agriculture is maintained through heroic, continuous intervention. Precise drones distributing synthetic fertilizers. Genetically engineered crops with desperate root systems. Aquifers pumped from deep fossil water. It is a high-tech, high-input, perpetual life support system for a patient whose own immune system is gone. But the oxidative debt remains. The managed, simplified ecosystems are pathetic sequesters. They are carbon neutral at best and often still net sources. The oxygen balance continues its slow, relentless, million-year slide. Now, witness the cascade failure. It does not come as a collapse, but as a creeping, universal degradation of capacity. First, the metabolic ceiling lowers. Large, active, intelligent animals, the very type that built the civilization, evolved under a specific, high-oxygen tension. Their mitochondria, their neural chemistry, their very cellular respiration is fine-tuned to it. A global drop of even 5% begins to impose a subtle, universal stress. Cellular energy production becomes less efficient. Cognitive endurance wanes. The capacity for deep, sustained focus diminishes. Physical stamina declines. Reproductive viability becomes slightly more fragile. Miscarriage rates creep up. The species, the civilization's creators and maintainers, become subtly less robust, more prone to chronic fatigue, to low-grade illness, to a pervasive sense of malaise that has no single cause. Second, combustion efficiency falls. The engines of industry and transport, even if primarily fusion-powered, still rely on combustion for essential processes, metallurgy, cement production, chemical manufacturing, emergency power. As oxygen dips, these processes require more energy input, more raw material, more complex infrastructure to achieve the same output. The civilization's entire material base becomes more costly to maintain. It must work harder, extract more, disturb more land, just to stand still. This acceleration of effort further speeds the oxidative debt. Third, and most cruelly, the solutions become the problem. Seeing the ominous trend in their atmospheric models, the civilization scientists will propose technological fixes. Perhaps they will seed the oceans with engineered hyperphotosynthetic algae. Perhaps they will build continent-sized electrosynthetic reactors that split water to produce oxygen. But these projects are stupendously resource-intensive. They require mining on a scale that scars the planet, manufacturing that consumes vast energy, deployment and maintenance that itself would burn mountains of oxygen in logistics and support. They are attempting to run a global, perpetual, oxygen-producing life support system using an industrial base that is a net oxygen consumer. The scale of the fix needed is precisely the scale that accelerates the problem. The civilization is now in a perfect trap. To solve the oxygen deficit, it must engage in oxygen-intensive activity. It is trying to bail out a sinking ship with a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. You might argue this is planetary thinking. They will transcend it. They will abandon planetary surfaces altogether. They will become a spacefaring species, living in unneiled cylinders with perfectly closed, recycled ecologies. But this proposed escape reveals the ultimate tragic paradox. Building that post-planetary infrastructure, the fleet of rotating habitats, the asteroid mining complexes, the fusion-powered closed-loop life support, requires a level of industrial mobilization, wealth concentration, and stable, long-term investment that is only possible from the foundation of a vast, wealthy, stable planetary civilization. That technological base, the window of opportunity to make the great jump, the period when the civilization has the energy, resources, and coherent will to build the lifeboats, may close before the planetary conditions deteriorate enough to provide the urgent motivation. They may be trapped on their world, not by gravity, but by their own metabolic debt. The ladder of technology they built turns out to have been resting on the very ground it was consuming. Now, let us pull the camera back, to the cosmic scale, to the Fermi paradox, the great question, where's everybody? We point our telescopes and radios, searching for deliberate signals, for the infrared glow of Dyson swarms, for the glint of alien probes. We are looking for artifacts of intention. We should instead be training our most sensitive spectroscopes on exoplanet atmospheres, looking for an artifact of chemistry. The most detectable, unambiguous sign of a long-lived technological civilization across interstellar distances may not be a beacon. It may be a spectral signature of managed decline, a rocky, Earth-like world orbiting in its star's habitable zone, whose atmosphere shows the unmistakable chemical fingerprint of a broken cycle, an oxygen absorption line that is not stable, not varying with natural biological cycles, but on a long, slow, million-year downward trajectory that defies all natural planetary models, a line that whispers of a vast, systematic, ongoing oxidation of the planetary body, followed, perhaps eons later, by a simpler, quieter spectrum, high CO2, low O2, maybe a haze of sulfates from last-ditch, catastrophic geoengineering attempts. The silent, chemical tombstone of a civilization that mastered fusion, unified its world, cured death, but could not solve the equation of its own breakfast. This is not a great filter that strikes from the outside like gamma-ray bursts. It is not a filter of self-destruction through war or folly. It is a filter of success. It is a direct, inescapable thermodynamic byproduct of the agricultural surplus that makes civilization possible. The thing that allows specialization, cities, science, and technology is the very same thing that, over geological time, unmakes the world that sustains it. No malice is required. No stupidity is needed. Just a continued, successful application of the core logic of civilization. Simplify the complex system, extract its stored energy, convert it to growth. The soil shield is consumed not out of greed, but out of necessity, millimeter by millimeter, harvest by harvest, over 10,000 years. This reframes our own history. The collapse of ancient agrarian empires, the salinization of Suma's fields, the deforestation and erosion that hollowed out the Roman latifundia, the dust bowls of more recent memory, were not mere historical accidents or bad management. They were localized, early warning tremors of this fundamental, civilizational scale vulnerability. We historically solved them not by fixing the core equation, but by moving to new, virgin lands. By tapping into deeper, older carbon stores, fossil fuels, to synthesize fertilizers, by treating the symptom while worsening the underlying condition. It also brutally reframes our future. Our modern concept of sustainability is obsessively focused on carbon cycles and energy budgets. It is almost entirely blind to the oxygen balance sheet and the irreversible drawdown of geological-scale soil capital. We debate net zero carbon while remaining net negative in the planet's foundational life support infrastructure. We are not facing an environmental problem. We are confronting a civilizational design flaw, a flaw written into the first chapter of our story as farmers. The universe may be teeming with life. It may sparkle with intelligence. On countless green worlds, the first tool users may arise, look up at their stars, and dream the same dreams. But if they are carbon-based, oxygen-breathing, and planet-bound, if they rely on cultivating a planetary surface to feed a dense, complex population, then they are all without a single exception, actors in the same tragic play. Their script is written not in their languages, but in their biochemistry. Their timeline is set not by the lifespan of their star, but by the thickness of the soil shield they inherited. Their greatness is measured by the height of their towers, and their longevity by the rate at which they grind the foundation of those towers back into dust. The profound silence of the cosmos, then, is not the silence of an empty nursery. It is the silence of a vast, dark museum, a gallery filled with breathtaking, magnificent paintings, portraits of civilizations in their prime. And in this gallery, the lights are on a timer set by the painters themselves. Each masterpiece is slowly, inexorably, fading to the exact same shade of gray, at a pace so gradual that the portraits themselves never perceive the dimming. We are not alone. We are simply here, now, early in our own process, still marveling at the vividness of our colors, still believing the fade is a myth told about others. The great, cosmic-level work of a civilization is not to reach the stars. It is to learn the most difficult lesson of all, how to live on a planet, without unknowingly, necessarily, dismantling the very, very thin layer of life that keeps its air fit for a mind to breathe. That is a filter, not in the distant, hostile void between stars, but in the intimate, nurturing, life-giving ground beneath our feet. A filter constructed not of rock or radiation, but of life itself, and of time. And now a shovel, the tool that built every great thing we have ever known, is already in our hand. We have been digging with it since the dawn of history. The only question left is whether we have the wisdom to recognize the hole we are standing in before it becomes our grave.